Sunday night at 9 on MPT. Programs on MPT are made possible by our members and the following.
MSATP is a collective embodiment of accounting, tax, and financial service businesses. We're committed to providing quality and affordable education, technical and personal support, and opportunities for building business. Visit msatp.org to learn more.
University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, leading the way on Chesapeake Bay restoration, while guiding our state, nation, and world toward a more sustainable future.
Start your journey to success at Salisbury University. Located on Maryland's Eastern Shore, SU offers over 120 majors and minors spanning business, education, health, the arts, and science. Students have opportunities for internships and research. Learn more at salisbury.edu.
The Clean Energy Advantage program offers loans for Maryland residents to make energy efficiency improvements. The program is part of Empower Maryland and offered by Maryland Clean Energy Center and Montgomery County Green Bank. Visit cealoan.org.
This program is made by MPT to enrich the diverse communities throughout our state and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you.
Connecting Marylanders to their government. This is State Circle.
Welcome to State Circle. Tonight, your chance to meet the candidates running for the Democratic nomination to be Maryland's next Attorney General. Current Attorney General Brian Frosh is retiring after 2 terms in office. The Democratic primary has Congressman and former Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown facing former First Lady and retired Judge Katie Curran O'Malley. We spoke first with Mr. Brown. Congressman Brown, thank you for joining us. You've been in Congress for 6 years. You're giving up a safe seat and probably the shortest commute of any member of Congress in America to run for the office of Attorney General of Maryland. Tell us about your decision.
Sure. Well, Jeff, thanks, first of all, you and your colleagues at MPT for covering this very important race for Attorney General. And I've never done anything that's safe in life, or certainly that hasn't been a driving factor. This is my profession of public service, and I've got a proven record of leadership, both in the executive branch as Lieutenant Governor, in the legislative branch, both in Annapolis and on Capitol Hill. And now is an opportunity to take my legal experience in education, coupled with my public service experience, and put it to a greater and higher use on behalf of the people of Maryland. The Office of the Attorney General has extraordinary and broad responsibilities in areas ranging from civil rights to environmental law, public safety. These are issues I've worked on for my career in public service. I want to take that experience, that training, and that passion to fighting for Marylanders in their communities as their next Attorney General.
You would be the first Black Attorney General in state history. Is that a motivating factor for you?
My motivating factor really is driven by equity and fairness, and that has been the lens through which I have done my work throughout my entire years of public service. And whether it's the work I've done on Capitol Hill to make sure that Black and brown soldiers are treated fairly under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, or the work I did as Lieutenant Governor to address health disparities that we've seen along racial and ethnic lines. And so I'm certainly motivated by the desire, the passion to ensure that regardless of race, ethnicity, gender orientation, or sexual orientation, that every Marylander has an opportunity to live a wonderful life, a fantastic life, treated fairly under the law. So to the extent that we talk about race in this race, it's the motivating factor for me to make sure that regardless of race, every Marylander is empowered and protected under the law.
How do you look at the job? I mean, if you're fortunate to be elected and take office, when you get to work, what part of it are you most excited about?
Look, I'm excited about leading 700 professionals, right? Attorneys and paralegals, investigators and counselors in fighting for the people of Maryland. And that's whether we're working with local states attorneys to tackle crime and improve public safety, or whether we're working with the Department of the Environment to ensure that we're inspecting for environmental compliance and holding those who are polluters and not complying with federal and state environmental laws to do better. to comply with the law, or whether we're addressing things like hate crimes and even addressing what we know is coming to Maryland, which are attacks against women's reproductive freedoms. So I'm really excited about leading a large, sprawling operation. It's going to be, it's like the largest law firm in Maryland. And you need someone with executive experience, which I have as lieutenant governor. In the Army, as a colonel, I led 80 Army lawyers and paralegals providing legal services to soldiers involving, criminal defense, consumer protection matters, estate planning for their families. As a legislative leader, look, I led the effort now almost 10 years ago to restrict the access to semi-automatic rifles in Maryland. I worked with Brian Frost this year in the General Assembly to ban ghost guns. And tomorrow, or this week, I should say, the House of Representatives is, after 3 years, going to take up my bill that would set a national standard that raises the age to 21 for anyone looking to buy a semi-automatic centerfire rifle. So there's a lot of experience that I bring to the office. It's a diverse and large enterprise, and that's the kind of experience that Marylanders need in the next Attorney General.
You mentioned the local state's attorneys, certainly gun violence, crime, big issues for voters this year. The way it works in Maryland, the state's attorneys are the ones prosecuting cases. The Attorney General does have a role, though. How do you see that?
The Attorney General has an important role. There's a criminal division. There is within that division an organized crime unit. First of all, it's too small. There are only 12 lawyers. I'm going to look to triple the size. They handle matters ranging from narcotics trafficking, gun trafficking, even human trafficking, sex and labor trafficking, to major felonies. So one of the things I want to do is increase the size of that office. I want to partner with state's attorneys from Baltimore City to Montgomery County to Wycomico County, regardless, and make sure that we're supporting their locally driven efforts to address their most serious crime challenges. And it doesn't matter who the state's attorney is in Baltimore City or anywhere else. It's the responsibility and the obligation of Maryland's Attorney General to forge a strong partnership. So our organized crime unit will be certainly involved in the crime fighting effort. But I also need to say that our criminal justice system is broken. It really is in Maryland. Not only is crime on the rise, and you've got law enforcement, you have prosecutors, you have judges all involved in tackling this problem. But not only do we see crime on the rise, but when you look at our recidivism rate in Maryland, the rate at which people reoffend, it's twice the level or rate of Virginia. When you look at who's being incarcerated in Maryland, Maryland incarcerates young black men at a higher rate than any state in the nation. And we have the highest percentage of black men behind bars than any other state, including Mississippi. The system is broken. So in addition to the investigations and the prosecutions, we have to bring around meaningful reform to our juvenile justice system and the way that we support returning citizens so they can be productive in their communities and not return to jail or prison.
I'm stunned by the Virginia number. The Maryland legislature has made all sorts of changes just in recent years when it comes to low-level offenses and diversion programs and I believe sentencing equity. Are you saying that's not working?
What I'm saying is some of the efforts we've taken in Maryland have reduced recidivism. It used to be closer to 50%. It's now north of 40%. But Virginia is 20%. There are other states that are investing more in their returning citizens, employment services, health services, housing services. Although it may seem counterintuitive, it's less expensive and more effective to invest in a returning citizen so they can be productive in society than to reincarcerate them if they reoffend. So Maryland is moving in the right direction, not nearly fast enough. And as Attorney General, I'm going to be leaning into ensuring that we are funding the kinds of programs that we can reduce recidivism, that we can reform our juvenile justice system. Right now, it's a system where we have judges and prosecutors that are essentially, and the evidence supports this, sort of converting children into hardened criminals by over incarcerating them. We need to really reform, rehabilitate, and restore children so they can continue to be on a path, a more productive path, and not on a trajectory that turns them into hardened criminals. The system is broken, and as Attorney General, I want to be a part of fixing it, part of the reform efforts to do that. And I've got a track record of doing that.
The Attorney General's office has recently taken on a role investigating police-involved deaths where there's a shooting by an officer, for example. How do you think that system is working?
Sure. And first of all, police accountability is important. Law enforcement, just like any other public official, we have to hold ourselves accountable. While I believe that the vast majority of the men and women who raise their hand to protect and serve our communities are honorable, when you have at least just one bad police officer, things go really wrong, really bad fast. So we've got to hold all of law enforcement, all public officials accountable. The legislature gave the Attorney General the authority to investigate police-involved deaths. I think the next evolution or iteration is you have to give to the Attorney General the authority to prosecute those cases if the investigation warrants, right? If you speak with most states' attorneys, they'll tell you, well, in the first place, they didn't want to give the Attorney General that authority. But now that the Attorney General does have it, even local states' attorneys would prefer that the Attorney General prosecute any cases arising out of those investigations, because no local state's attorney really wants to inherit someone else's investigation. So I think the next iteration, and I'll go to the General Assembly in 2023 to get the authority to prosecute law enforcement if the investigation supports a prosecution.
The Attorney General's office has some other less well-known divisions, the Consumer Protection Division, for example.
The Consumer Protection Division is actually celebrating its 50th year. It's one of the first Office of Attorney General that created a Consumer Protection Division. It's probably the most forward-facing division in the office where more Marylanders come in contact with it. Think about, the lemon law and fraudulent practices that you may encounter when buying a car or buying a timeshare. Think about our seniors. I think about my 95-year-old mother and the scams that she's getting in the mail, email, internet. The technology is just out of hand in terms of the scams and the fraudulent practices. All of this is addressed by the Consumer Protection Division. They also handle landlord-tenant mediation. So it's a very important office. And my goal is to make sure that we continue in the tradition that Brian Frost has established for that office, but we infuse more technology so we can keep up with the latest techniques and tactics that are being used to scam Maryland consumers, particularly our senior population.
Are there any substantive differences in how you would run this office and serve in this position compared to your opponent that you think voters should know about?
I think one of the differences that we see is that I'm leaning into the need to expand the authorities of this office to do the work that the people of Maryland expect the Attorney General to do. I've called for an independent civil rights division that has enforcement powers. So whether we're enforcing voting rights or whether we're enforcing the rights of the LGBTQIA+ community or workers' rights or defending against attacks on women's reproductive freedoms, I believe that the Maryland Attorney General's office needs independent authority, and I've called for that. I've called for independent authority when it comes to inspections and enforcement actions for environmental violations. Today, the office is limited to enforcing environmental crimes, but there are many environmental violations that fall short of criminal conduct, but the Attorney General does not have the authority unless the Department of the Environment invites the Attorney General into the investigation and enforcement action. So substantively, where I see a major difference based on my experience of being in the executive branch as Lieutenant Governor, based on my experience of serving in two legislative bodies, Capitol Hill, Congress, Annapolis, General Assembly, I understand the need for the Attorney General to bring about reform, changing the law to improve not only the work of the office, but the quality of life for Marylanders. And there's no other candidate in this race that brings that type of leadership experience, advocacy, and executive experience.
Our thanks to Mr. Brown. Now to our interview with Judge O'Malley. Judge, thank you for joining us. I know this is your first run for elective office, but it is far from the first time someone in the Curran or O'Malley clan has run for office. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's my first time.
In terms of family, of course, your father was the Attorney General of Maryland, served as Lieutenant Governor. From his time as the AG, what stands out for you?
He just such a phenomenal public servant. Even before he became Attorney General, just the different stands he took that really showed his spine and his integrity when they weren't popular stands, like against the Vietnam War, and also Medicaid funding for abortions for women of low income. And, that was certainly not popular in his district, and he's Catholic. So he took some beatings for things that he believed in. But I think people always respected the fact that he did what he thought was right, even if they disagreed with him. And he always explained why he was doing what he was doing. He's never been the politician's politician. He's always been the people's, servant and done such a great job. I'm very proud of him. And I watched him actually argue 2 cases in the Supreme Court, 2 cases that he won. So there's a lot of great things that stand out about both my parents, but my father's legal career, definitely.
How much was that history a motivating factor for deciding to leave the bench and run for this office?
So I have such a great respect for the office, and knowing the type of work that attorneys general do across our nation, and how attorneys general can really affect the lives of people day in and day out, in big issues and small issues. So just knowing how important the role is and seeing it up close and personal, that gave me the desire to jump off the bench after 20 years and get into the race so that I could go out and do the hard work that the people of Maryland deserve their attorney general do.
Are there any issues that you think separate you from Congressman Brown in terms of the agenda for the office, how you would operate the office?
So certainly, what separates myself and Congressman Brown is the fact that I've actually been working in Maryland's courtrooms for the past 30 years. The congressman is a great politician. He's been, a great public servant as a legislator, but the attorney general is actually leading 400 plus lawyers that go to court. A good portion of what they do deals with public safety. 40% of the work in the Court of Appeals is all done by assistant attorney generals to uphold all the criminal convictions that happen across our state. So I believe the thing that separates us is that he's only tried about 3 or 4 cases and has never tried a single criminal case in Maryland. So the experience that I have is of trying hundreds of cases in front of judges and jurors as a state's attorney, assistant state's attorney, and then as a judge, not only dealing with criminal cases, but our civil laws as well. So I've presided over thousands of cases over the past 20 years. And I think that is the knowledge that you need in an attorney general when you're leading all these lawyers that actually go to court to do the good work for the people of Maryland.
Gun violence and crime, top issues for voters this year. Of course, local prosecutors do the prosecuting. As you mentioned, there's appellate work. What else can an attorney general do in the fight against crime and violence?
There's a whole lot, because Brian Frosch organized or got the organized crime division set up in 2015. So he's been given authority to do gang violence crimes through a governor's letter. But what he decided to do is then actually form an entire unit of lawyers that work with state, federal, and local law enforcement, as well as state's attorneys across the state to go after these gun traffickers, drug traffickers, and human trafficking. The AG office also picks up any kind of criminal offense, whether it's the carjacking cases that are happening that are multi-jurisdictional, because criminals don't just stay in one neat little jurisdiction. They don't say, I'm just going to stay in Baltimore City. Oftentimes they leave the city and they go to Anne Arundel County, or they go to Howard County or Baltimore County. So having this ability to do these multi-jurisdictional prosecutions has been a huge part of what the Attorney General does now to curb violent crime, which we are seeing spike at an astronomical amount. So I can do that job on day one. I've been in courtrooms doing those cases for a decade as a prosecutor, and then hearing these cases for the past 20 years.
Tell me about your courtroom experience with criminal justice in the Baltimore area. We did an interview years ago. I think it involved drug court. Something was changing with drug court maybe, and you were involved in that.
So we do a lot of diversionary. The judiciary does a lot of problem-solving courts, and I was a big part of that when I worked as a judge, not only in drug treatment court where I sat for 3 years, but also with the domestic violence courts where we brought those cases in and dealt with them differently, because they are a very different animal. Domestic violence cases are completely different than the other cases on the docket, so separating them out. But doing the type of diversionary work so that we could get people who came into our courtrooms, whether the defendants who came in had a drug issue or a mental health issue, or maybe they had PTSD because of veterans services, being veterans and serving our country. We founded these different problem-solving courts in Baltimore City so that people could get the specific services that they needed, and we could sort of streamline them to those things, get them out of the criminal justice system, and then help get their cases expunged. We didn't help them. I mean, they'd file for expungements, and then the General Assembly passed all these great laws that a lot of misdemeanors to be expunged, so we could get rid of those on their records so people could get back into society, working drug-free with mental health services and or veterans treatment services. We even had a homelessness court where we were getting people housing to try and, with these people individuals that didn't have homes and were maybe getting citations for urinating in public or trespassing, these minor crimes. We could find out what's the problem, how do we solve it? And that was a great deal of the work, which I thought, some of my colleagues said it was social work, but I really think as a judge, you are a social worker. You're working with society to try and make things better for victims and for defendants, if you can, when it's not a public safety issue. Certainly when there's crimes of violence against people, you have to take different tactics and make sure that public safety is a key issue.
I'm curious about your experiences with the testimony of police officers. When you were on the bench in your courtroom, you must have heard hundreds of cases where an officer was testifying. Recently, hundreds of Baltimore City officers have been accused of being unreliable witnesses. What was your experience like?
So I would say on the most part, I had really good men and women serving the Baltimore Police Department come before me and either present search warrants or testify in court. And I felt as though the majority of them were professionals, but as we have learned through the years, power corrupts, and without having that power transparent and accountable, we have seen just this culture of corruption in the Baltimore City Police Department, and that can happen in any police department where there's not transparency and accountability. So I did actually have two police officers about a decade ago testify in a case where I found on the record that they had not told the truth. And after I made that finding, I then went and filed a complaint with the internal investigations, and nothing ever happened. I didn't get a phone call back. There was no letter sent to me saying this is what we did to follow up on that. They didn't have to agree with me that I found that they were incredible, but they were, but they didn't do anything. And so it made me really wonder what happens when a regular citizen complains about a police officer. Do they just throw these complaints in the trash? So that's why I believe it's really important that we continue to work for transparency and accountability all across the board in policing. Body-worn cameras will be on police officers by 2025. They're already in Baltimore City, which has been a remarkable way of getting down to separating different issues, whether in criminal courts. And people say it wasn't me, and then you turn on the recording and there's the suspect. So it also protects citizens at the same time from abuses and police officers not telling the truth because you have a recording. And so I think that's a really great way of transparency. But we definitely need to make sure the police accountability boards, which are all across the state, supposed to go into effect July of this year, are up and running when they are, so that citizens have a place where they can file a complaint and there's follow through, regardless of what it is, whether the citizen's happy with that complaint or not, that there is follow through and that there are procedures and oversight.
Well, and now the Attorney General's office is directly involved in police oversight in terms of police-involved shootings and other deaths that happen in the context of the involvement of police officers. Congressman Brown wants to see the AG's office be able to step in to prosecute directly where a violation is found. How do you see that?
Well, that's interesting because he said before that he doesn't want to step in. What the law is set up now to do, which is the same bunch of reforms that were passed in 2021 under the name of Anton Black. The law sets up the independent investigations unit that allows the AG's office to investigate the actual civilian death and how was it justified or unjustified. So the AG's office investigates, but the state's attorneys around the state didn't want to give the power for the Attorney General to prosecute if the AG's investigation finds that the officer or officers should be prosecuted. So it's a little wobbly now. The AG doesn't have the authority to prosecute those cases. I think the Attorney General should, and I've said this from day one in talking about that, should have the authority to also prosecute, because you don't want an investigating, a whole investigation to then go back to a jurisdiction where they might not make the same finding. They might not want to prosecute. So I think we need it in law where it says the Attorney General gets to prosecute those cases, and we could do it in conjunction with the jurisdiction where it happened, with their their state's attorneys. But I really do think it needs to be cleaned up. And I know they worked on it this past session, and still has a little bit of work to do to get that really clarified so that Marylanders will know that the police are not policing themselves.
The Attorney General's office has a number of roles that really aren't well known, including the Consumer Protection Division. Are there any aspects of the office in particular that you would want to strengthen?
So the Consumer Protection Division is a very large part of the office, and it does such great work for big complaints as well as small complaints for citizens all across Maryland. The Environmental Crimes Unit right now only has, I believe, one lawyer and one investigator, and I think it's essential that that be boosted, because we have a pretty big state and a lot of area to cover, and there's so many different investigations that need to go on, whether it's talking about farming on the Eastern Shore or what's happening in Western Maryland at Deep Creek Lake with other, travelers coming in from other areas and bringing in invasive species. So all of these complaints that are fielded have to get the attention that they need. So I would like to see that boosted. And I know it's tough because you're talking about more resources, more money, and hopefully the next governor will see the same, that I think, on the same page and agree that our environment really is something we need to be protecting.
It is, as you think, I think you mentioned, a big law firm, maybe the biggest law firm in the state. When you look at the team that's there in terms of credentials and diversity and the workload, anything you would want to change?
Well, I know there are some fabulous lawyers there, really great lawyers. You've got Steve Sakamoto Wangle in the Consumer Protection Division, who's been there for a long time, Hannibal Kemmer, and you've got really great, dedicated citizens. The two deputies are fantastic women, Carolyn Quattrocki and Liz Harris. I think, and I've known, other lawyers in that office, and they're so professional and wonderful. So I would always, want to keep what has been going and going well for a long time. The only thing I'd like to see are just more of them, more lawyers in organized crime, more lawyers in environmental crime to help them. And, there's about 18 lawyers in criminal appeals, and they're so busy. They're very busy. They do 40% of the work that goes on in the Court of Special Appeals and Court of Appeals. So I think, more lawyers, the better.
Our thanks to Judge O'Malley, and thank you for watching State Circle. Have a good night.
You serve the state, you serve the nation, you earn the benefits. The Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs Women Veterans Inclusion Program encourages women veterans to share their military accomplishments and learn about VA benefits on the MDVA website.
Access Solar provides income-qualified households in Montgomery County with several financing options to install solar on their homes. This program is offered by the nonprofit Montgomery County Green Bank. Visit mcgreenbank.org.
UMBC offers professional applied master's degrees, where learning with industry colleagues is enhanced with a wealth of network connections.